They go short from the corner. Aronson back to Sealy on that left peg. That's a tasty delivery and a free header in the back stick. And it's Darren Yappy.
Short corner. So clever. Back in the game for Dante Sealy. And then unmarked. In fact, there were two of them. You could see Navarro lining up as well. We're the defenders. We're the markers. You've got to stay closer than that. You've got to try and put them off. Goalkeeper's got no chance when someone's heading in from 4 yards out. As you can see, Daniel not even sort of trying to get there because he just got no chance to react in time. So
San Jose looked tired and cold after the second goal. Rapids take a 2-0 lead in halftime. That was the first goal of the match, minus VAR. Darren Yappy header from Dante Sealy, who had he looked like Terry Cook out there. Old Rapids heads would know what I'm talking about there. This is Rapids Rant. I am Don Pablo. Thank you for listening to the show ahead of the FC Dallas match. Post Salt Lake disappointment / jubilance of San Jose and the Rapids getting to the U.S. Open Cup semifinal, which will be played in mid-September at Dick's Sporting Goods Park against St. Louis City. That's right, Mound City is coming back to Denver for a spot in the final of the U.S. Open Cup. Of course, the Rapids already played St. Louis a couple weeks ago in early May, getting shut out 1-0. So I'm sure the guys and Coach Matt Wells will want some revenge. And they actually go to St. Louis ahead of the U.S. Open Cup match in early August. So we're going to be looking forward to seeing St. Louis then, scouting from a couple weeks ago, breaking down what happened in that match, and then get ready for the semifinal, the second semifinal in the last couple years. That will be big games, probably the biggest game of the year for the Rapids, unless they make hay in the MLS Cup playoffs at the end of this season, 2026 MLS. And as always, you can find Rapid Rant. You can go on Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all of that. Reddit. I lurk around Reddit and post sometimes when people lose their mind about altitude affecting the game, and just being excited, talking about who's going to score that night, or watching the Reddit predictors. I'm all over the place. Probably won't find me on Facebook as much, but I'm around. You can find Rapids Rant wherever you are. And if you're listening to this in podcast form, tell your friends. Any podcasting service situation, you can find us there. Of course, on YouTube and Twitch. Go to Mountain Time Sports, Mountain Time Sports Report, Mountain Standard Time Sports Report, the Forgotten Time Zone. But I'm here, and I talk about it, and I'm pretty excited for how the Rapids played this week. They had a good first 30 minutes in Salt Lake, and after that, we might see a rematch of sorts in the World Cup, and even from last year, because, of course, USA and Australia will be playing this year in Seattle. It looks like Lucas Harrington is definitely going to be on the Australia squad, and the newcomer, the kid Gozo, the homegrown player for Salt Lake, who actually grew up in the Salt Lake area, he was on fire. He scored against the Rapids. He looked good. We only heard the announcers speaking about him for the last, 35 minutes. Maybe he's going to be on the USA squad, a late addition, and they could have a rematch, Gozo and Lucas Harrington in Seattle in late June. But that's so far away. We still got a week or so left in May. We still got another match before the Rapids still have another match before World Cup preparation begins in earnest. And this is a late night Rapids Rant. I'm doing this oh boy, the moon is already almost setting in the sky ahead of Saturday night's match against FC Dallas at DSG Park. Yepi came through again against San Jose in the Open Cup, and Hafa, he played really well, and I was excited for him to get the penalty chance correctly. And I don't know. I don't know who didn't see it. The referee was the only guy that didn't see it. And as I'll say it like this, when you see like these very smart people and the C-suites and the social media, the Facebook, and all these guys that are high level corporate people say you got to limit the screen time. They limit the screen time for the kids. They're really sticklers about it. I got some people that are high level up in there, like friends or smart people with advanced degrees and such, and they limit their kids' screen time. I'm like, I think that referee, and I'm not even gonna dox him or whatever. I think he relies on VAR way too much, because it was 3 in the first half. I don't want to argue about the first goal the Rapids scored because eventually the result was good, but that could have been one of them. And I don't blame Matt Wells for not being able to participate in this weekend's match against FC Dallas. He talked about that in his press conference earlier this week. Because sometimes, like, you got to give referees the business, right? And it's on the referee for really letting the coaches get that way. You gotta take control. You're in charge of the game. Maybe have some ground rules. And I got a way to maybe fix it that was floated this week on a pretty good Pablo Maurer and Matt Hughes Guardian article. But as far as that guy, he likes VAR way too much, and maybe relying on VAR is a good thing. I don't know, like in volleyball, and you get like only a couple challenges. In tennis, you only get a couple challenges. In baseball, which is a new rule this year, which I actually think is the fastest and best way to challenge balls and strikes, because you can't argue. It takes the arguing out of the game for balls and strikes anyway. And I think the first time I was at a game and saw that on TV, it was like, oh man, it's that fast? No way. And then going to a Rockies game and having them challenge it, and it's over in 20 seconds. Like, it really doesn't get the rhythm out of the game like VAR does. VAR gets the rhythm out of the game. And I understand it's different kind of situation. Pitching, they have a pitch clock, and you have 30 seconds, and you can figure it out really quickly. But I just think that I like the goal line technology. It's close. It's accurate. VAR is still kind of subjective, and I guess that's why you use it. Although the handball in the box, I don't know what the referee was looking at. The linesman, I swear the linesman told him. It had to have, because the VAR was quick. I don't know what the ref was looking at. He's busy. He's got a lot of stress on his shoulders. But maybe that guy. Let's get some more games under our belt. I don't know. But as far as rule changes go, let's go to that Guardian article right now. And MLS is lobbying the IFAB to explore stopping clock for pauses in play. And MLS actually had this rule back when they started, and they did the not penalty kicks. It was a play on penalty kicks, and they had a 30-yard run up, or it was something like that. And they used to handle ties in the end of the game a little different than penalties. I liked it. It was also 30 years ago, so I don't remember exactly what happened. I remember talking about Old Mile High when the Rapids first started playing and watching them there. Obviously, MLS evolved, and they're not in their final form, but they are changing the schedule and getting on the world calendar next year, which is I mean, it was. I got a book about MLS soccer. Major League Goals is what it's called, and first of all, they won't do promotion relegation, but I'm not getting into that subject. Other than that, U.S. wanted the world to adopt their rules because U.S. exceptionalism. But we'll say this: upcoming World Cup, the time rule and the getting off the field. When you have a substitution and the injury, you're going to get 2 minutes timeout, or depending on the injury situation. They're putting that in the World Cup this year. So changing the rules and stopping clock. Actually like that idea. And who knows if it's going to happen? It's definitely not happening this year, but maybe sometime in the future. And just like the get off the field, you have 30 seconds to get off the field for a substitution, which is a way of time wasting. They're going to, they eventually implemented that rule, and they started in the USL/MLS Next Pro, and then it made way to MLS, and now it's going to be a worldwide rule. So that's awesome. That's a thing that came from United States soccer. And if you watch college soccer, they do the same thing. They will stop the clock, and it counts differently. It counts down, or it counts down. Yeah. So you know how much time you have left. And one of the things that I think would be good, and it happens in other sports, in basketball, the referee controls when the clock starts, right? So when the clock starts, if there's, whatever 2 minutes left when they're inbounding the ball, if it's not run a play, like run a play, just after a basket is made and they have 5 seconds to inbound the ball, the clock runs. But if there's like a free throw or a timeout or stop a play, the referee has a little button on the back of their uniform, and it's just a little whatever. And he can, once the ball is touched, so the referees, they get that right. Now, the timekeeper stops the clock, but referees have in basketball and NBA, the referees have discretion to go back and add more time, and that's an easy review that doesn't take that long. A la the baseball balls and strikes. So you can implement that in MLS, and referees make a big deal about their watch, and there's a worldwide watch that is what am I trying to say? Useful. That's how they use it. And just get one that has a pause. Is there a watch that has pause? Oh, of course, every watch. Also, they can make a smartwatch. Make a smartwatch app. Android or Apple. And it would be easy to stop the clock and see how much time you have left. On a foul, on an injury. And I think it just happened this weekend, or mid in San Jose. There was 9 minutes of stoppage time. 9 minutes. And for the people that weren't hurt, and obviously the teams get a little break, but you're still out there for 10 extra minutes. And then at the end of the game, when you're more tired, you're out there for extra time. And I guess it wouldn't really make a difference that much, but I think it would be easier if referees or if the game stopped, if you could pause, because it really happens. It really happens in most sports with a clock. Just saying. I think that change should be studied and actually, implemented in the MLS Next Pro /USL and see how that works. Because if the world governing body of soccer is actually listening to MLS and maybe changing rules, maybe making advancements in the sport, that's a good thing. That's a good thing as USA Soccer, including all eyes are going to be United States, North America continent here in a couple of weeks. So bring in the stopwatch. You already have that technology on your wrist, referees. I think it would be not that hard. Obviously, television would be stopping the clock. I don't know how you would get that to sync with the referees watch, but that's logistics. That's your logistics to figure out. Why don't you make the fan make it easier? Because they didn't even put the extra time on the scoreboards until last year. Like, it was just 45 minutes, and then you got to guess how much time was left. So maybe that's the situation. You don't want to pause the scoreboard or anything. And by the way, it's going to be different this year in the World Cup because they're going to pause the game in the middle of the halves for water breaks. But the water breaks are going to include commercials, which I don't know if people are going to have a conniption because of these water breaks. They're going to pause the game and have commercial breaks in soccer, which they've kind of had before. I think they instituted in Qatar 2022 last World Cup, but they're going to be ubiquitous as it'll be every game 2026 World Cup. So we're already stopping the game. We're already changing that. These traditionalists, the game never changes, all that. Look, baseball is the same way, man. Baseball's been around since the 1800s. And they just put a clock timer, a pitch clock in a couple of years ago. And this year they just started the replay and balls and strikes and getting those things correct. So sometimes the game has to change, just as the best players in the world kind of dictate how other teams, have to defend them, because the best players in the world have talents that maybe people haven't seen before, or you have to counter the best players in the world. The game changes. I mean, I'm going to see the Netherlands in a couple of weeks, and they maybe should have won a World Cup back in the day, but they have a very fervent fan following. I'm looking forward to seeing that contingent, the Orange, marching through Kansas City on that game day. It's going to be right before the U.S. plays on the 25th. So that's going to be, we're going to watch Netherlands, Tunisia, and then the U.S. At a bar somewhere near Arrowhead, which it's not called Arrowhead, but it's Arrowhead to me, and I will be wearing nothing but orange that day. It will be Broncos orange. Not quite Netherlands orange, but I will be wearing Broncos orange in Arrowhead Stadium. Rapid Rant at the World Cup. So the traditionalists, look, there's progress. There's a, and it's really in business, although we're trying to change the rules because of, there's progress always in business. Progress, you gotta, what's the song? Pave Paradise, put up a parking lot. It's progress, right? We just do it because it's progress, because guys with money said to do it. Progress. Anyway, sometimes we have to take the traditional thing, tweak it a little bit for the times. All right? They didn't even have radio. The radio wasn't a thing. It was all print newspaper when soccer started, and we've had these same rules. We got to change a little bit. It's got to be different. Right? So, yeah, let's do the stop clock rule. But most importantly, and I'm going to end it with this again, let the referee still decide if there's another chance for that team. Not end the game when the clock runs out. Maybe give them that last chance. Something to think about. Things change. People change. The rules change. And if you could say MLS was a influencer in changing the world's game, I think that will give the United States soccer a little more credibility. So that's just something to think about. I try to give you things to think about here on Rapid Rant. Thanks for listening. I'm Don Pablo. Go to Mountain Time Sports Report on Twitch, on YouTube. You can watch us live. We're live right now. Although I will be putting this show in podcast form and throwing it on that feed wherever you find your podcasts. And it came out last week, but they were talking about MLS salaries, and I'm going to get on my soapbox one more time to put the Rant in Rapid Rant. And the salaries, and I know I get on this, and people get mad, people get offended. Well, I get offended by everything I say, but you shouldn't be offended by this. I don't know how you can be offended by this. Although, everything I say. They released the annual list of MLS salaries, and I don't even care. I don't even care about the numbers, but there's a good reason they do that, and I know the players, maybe don't want everybody knowing how much you make, but it goes back to, soccer players they were literally every man for himself. They were all contractors until a couple years ago when MLS got the union. And the union is going to be a big talking point this year in sports, not necessarily MLS, because baseball, the owners might lock out the players might strike after the World Series this year because the collective bargaining agreement is up and the owners really want to institute a salary cap. There's no salary cap in baseball. You can argue there's no salary cap in the MLS, but that's a story for a different time. That's an argument for not today's show, which we already are at 20 plus minutes. And we don't have another 20 minutes to even talk about that. Excuse me. I worked in media, and I've worked in media for a very long time. And, you kind of know what people's deals are, but you don't talk about it. And every locker room is different. Every clubhouse is different. Excuse me. And I don't know. I'm privy to players' conversations with each other, but I'm sure sometimes it happens. They talk about how much money they made. They clown on people how much money they made. I'm just look. You sign an extra contract. You sign another contract. You get to stick around the job that you love for another year to 5 years. I'm happy for you because successful, and is only going to help. And your salary will help the players that come later because. Your agent, their agent's going to see what you make compared to what their players' abilities are, and they're going to get them that deal. And you're going to know. And in the United States, let me be very clear. It's illegal to tell people you can't talk about how much you make. Now. But it's also a thing that you can get fired for any reason for at will states. Some states are not at will. New Mexico is one of those where you have to give explicit reason. And in other countries, you have to give explicit reasons and benefits and all that stuff. So if your salary is published, right, you kind of have more, and MLS is in a union now. So now your players get that. If you're at that ability, your agent, it just gives you more information. If you have less information, if you don't know how much that player is making, well, the owner can just make up whatever number. The general manager is like, oh, no, he's making this much. I can't possibly give you that much. You'll be the highest player. You're not the best. There's a reason for this. And that's why sports leagues have the strongest unions in the United States, especially baseball. And that's going to be a big deal. I remember the NBA instituted a salary cap around Michael Jordan because the owners didn't. First of all, Michael Jordan should have got paid way more. You can look at those articles. for what he's worth. But they instituted that salary cap. Now, obviously, it's whatever they make now, but the numbers don't matter. It's more the objectiveness of getting paid what you're worth, and that's why you have the collective bargaining. You have the power for not just having the one owner, the one guy who has the money. You have not just one guy who is saying, "Oh, well, you have to listen to what the owner says." There's a whole list of everybody that makes whatever they make, and you think your ability is good as this guy. Well, that gives you power to make that much. And sorry that I have to explain this to people, but it's just, I don't know. Some people don't understand why unions are a thing. But obviously the 40-hour work week, sometimes 5-day work week. Some people don't have that, but there's a reason unions exist. And before I get off of my soapbox, it didn't used to be that way. So it's a way for releasing your salary as a way for actually everybody to get paid more, including you players. Like, that's just a thing. And now maybe your agent doesn't have that much power. That's the thing. Maybe he wants to negotiate your deal for a different guy, and you're doing general manager a favor for your deal. That's a whole different situation. But generally, unions are a good thing. And the other thing, I understand they get a bad rap because of some teachers that are stuck in the room that they can't fire and things. But every corporation has that. Every company has bloat. Every government has some waste. But it's a thing. It's a thing to keep the owners honest, right? And they get mad at me for talking about that. And sometimes, leftist, communist, socialist Don comes out. But it's a way to give people more power. And if the unions for the plumber, for the elevator guy, can see them do this in national news in a way to, how they get more money. Well, the plumber and the teacher and the policeman and the firefighter, which by themselves get what you get, or by the 100 people strong collective bargaining with a union rep. Well, these guys are going to not work unless you get market rate, or do that calculus for how much they should get paid depending on cost of living in your locality. But I'll stop now. Unions are a good thing. People get paid what they get paid. To have more power on your side is obviously a good thing for you as an individual and as a collective group. That's why you have an agent. And I'll say this. Think about it like this. You buy a car, right? You have to go in there. Maybe you never negotiate anything. You have to buy a car. You have to go in the dealer. And obviously, you have to negotiate. Maybe it's the worst thing ever. There are guys that now sell their services to negotiate car deals. And I would rather pay that guy to negotiate a better car deal for me than to give money to the car dealership that kind of knows you don't have you don't have these negotiating skills. You don't have any other options, right? Cars have to be sold through dealers because that's a law in any given state. So the more representation you have, and it's not a lawyer, these car deal negotiators, they're just former car salesmen that are selling a service. They're also small businessmen, and if they know the car dealership game, like, you go once every couple of years, maybe once every 3 years, maybe once every 5-8 years. Like, you don't know how the markets change. All these situations. You just know. That's what I'm saying. Maybe this sounds like a sales pitch for these guys now, but it's more. It's a bigger picture thing, more macro. Would you rather have the guy that does it every day be on your side, or you going in to fight with the dealership about, and you don't know the ins and outs of car dealership and negotiating and everything? So there you go. Let's get back to soccer. You're listening to Rapid Rant. We do a little show, Rapid Rant, on Mountain Time Sports Report, Mountain Time Sports Network, Mountain Standard Time Sports. There you go. And just get back to Salt Lake a little bit. Gozo, that guy's actually from Salt Lake. He scored the first goal against the Colorado Rapids for Salt Lake last weekend. And they were talking about him, being on the U.S. outside shot of the U.S. national team. And I was getting mad. I'm like, how did Salt Lake get another homegrown? And, good for them. Because as a Rapids fan, it's not my favorite thing to lose to Salt Lake, even though it is a beautiful state. It's very lovely to drive through. You can hit Utah. I mean, Colorado, it's a four-corner state with Colorado, such as Arizona. And I remember, I think Nick Raimondo came from Arizona, and obviously the most cap player in Salt Lake history. And other, Utah, they're very good at scouting around the western side of the Rocky Mountains, Arizona, Nevada, and even Sacramento, who a couple of their homegrowns have come from. And one way, as a Rapid fan, to foil them, and I know I talk about expansion, who's going to be the 31st, 32nd team in MLS. And I think, selfishly, as a Mountain Time Zone fan, and in our, four-corner state, Arizona, and it blows our mind that they don't have a team. They should have a team. Like, this isn't hockey in Arizona. This is soccer. And especially with the change of the calendar, and this is another pitch for Dongar, especially with the change of the calendar, the weather is going to be amazing. Maybe not so much for Montreal and Toronto, but who's going to have good weather all year round to scout players, to bring them to their academy, maybe to live in Phoenix. Phoenix MLS team. I don't know. They shouldn't, 100% should not move Vancouver. So maybe that'll give a pitch for that guy to buy the Las Vegas MLS, which will also take away from Salt Lake, thus helping the Rapids in the rivalry. But Arizona, we looked at the market a couple of weeks ago, and Las Vegas was like 40s, 50s, but Arizona's top 10, man. Top 10. And you get these soccer players. Where would you rather live? Selfishly, 16 to 23-year-old guys that are coming up in the homegrown program. Would you rather live in Utah? Not that there's not lovely, attractive people in Utah. Women, men, you like what you like, whatever. Or Phoenix, Arizona State, Arizona Wildcats, University of Arizona. I don't know. I think it's a no-brainer for me, but I'm also 40-something, and people choose where they want to live for specific reasons. Arizona and Arizona State were, and I'm sure they still are, party schools. What school wants to be on top of that list? But, I'm just saying, especially with the calendar change and it not being, aggressively hot down there, temperature-wise. And who, if there was a chance for you to travel from Minnesota to watch, your Loons play in Phoenix in February, maybe there's a trip. And I understand Las Vegas would be maybe more attractive, but Arizona, you could hang out. How about the Rapids go there in March? The Rockies are in spring training. Get a Rapids and a Rockies doubleheader. Maybe same thing. The Twins, I think, go to the Grapefruit League in Florida, but they, the Cactus League teams attractive from Pacific Northwest. Not the best weather that time of year. Go down to Phoenix for a weekend. Watch the Mariners play. Obviously, Nevada would be a fun place too, but just had 2 teams there. That's more competition, obviously, for the Rapids, but Salt Lake's been doing really well down there, and good for them. But throw some more competitors in there. Competition is good for everything. It's good for the free market. It's just another entire conversation that needs to be had in a different time. But Arizona, I'm on the Arizona MLS expansion bandwagon, and put me in for half of Las Vegas, maybe Sacramento, who has been hosting the Athletics. And I know it's a bad word, but the Athletics, maybe the gypsies of Major League Baseball. I forget what they're called now. I'm sorry, that word is I think it's a slur at this point. But I forget what they're called. But I mean, a traveling. What is worse, carnies or gypsies? And send that message on Blue Sky. Let me know. Go to Rapids Rant Show, Blue Sky. And, there's the offensive thing that I said because I've been talking for 37 minutes. Coming up for the Colorado Rapids this weekend, FC Dallas. Score a lot of goals. It's going to test the Colorado Rapids defense, who has played very well in the month of May with the compressed schedule and all, and especially with the Rapids in the U.S. Open Cup matches that they've won and advanced. And I'm excited for that semifinal. I haven't had one since the Leagues Cup a couple years ago against, I think it was L.A. And, yeah, I'm excited. We'll see what happens. We'll see if Zach Steffen can get back at it. Watch another Lucas Harrington match. Hopefully he sticks around for a little bit. I saw his old Australian coach who has been around for a while in Brisbane. He said Lucas Harrington at 18, 17 was the best defender in Australia. He looks like it. I don't know who's scouting these international defenders, but Bombito and then Lucas Harrington. The Rapids are going to get a pretty penny, it looks like, from both of them. So I'm excited to see. And if Harrington and Gozo match up against each other in the World Cup, obviously Rapids fans around Denver saw that match last year. And Australia looked pretty good. I don't know what's going to happen this year, obviously, in the World Cup. But a lot of teams are getting in towns, training pretty soon. Sucks for the Congo team because they have to basically do a bubble, as we remember all those years ago in 2020, 2021. They got to do a bubble in Belgium for 3 weeks before they can travel over here, but Ebola is nothing to mess around with. I'm excited for that. I'm going to see some FC Dallas, one of the original MLS clubs that has not won an MLS title. Revolution being the other. I liked the weather. I thought it was going to be a lot colder than it was last Wednesday. The sun came out eventually, but it was kind of cold. And my last observation was, it was getting colder there in the second half. And maybe we can label Coach Matt Wells as fiery, right? He's fiery because he's the only person that took his coat off in the 75th minute. Everybody else was putting coats on, gloves, getting warm inside, jumping up and down. But Coach Wells took his coat off for the last 15 minutes, motivated the defense. They got the shutout against San Jose. I don't think we're going to get a shutout this Saturday against Dallas. I hope so. But we'll see. Dallas, obviously, the opponents in MLS Cup 2010. Rapids victorious. So there's a rematch that I appreciate. Also, Dallas is not my favorite place, but there it is. Although I think I have to stop there on my way to Kansas City on the plane, but whatever. I'll engage with Cowboy fans because, you know, they haven't won anything in 30 years. But one more dig before I left Rapids Rant this weekend. Remember to follow Rapids Rant, Blue Sky, Instagram, TikTok, of course. You can listen to Rapids Rant on YouTube and Twitch, Mountain Time Sports. Mountain Time Sports. Go there, follow it. You can follow us live. Subscribe to either of those channels. I am Don Pablo. Rapids versus FC Dallas at DSG Park this weekend before the World Cup break. And it's going to be, I'm going to do a show next week, and then I might take a couple weeks off for the World Cup. But as far as Rapids Rant, they get a break too for the World Cup. So I'm excited for that. If you have listened this far and listened to me become a Democrat socialist, a communist socialist, or whatever I am,